Call the meeting to order. First item, a nice good news story. I'd like to congratulate Comox's Stocky Edwards and Tony Edwards for their 70th wedding anniversary. You may know Stocky is Freedom of the Town of Comox recipient and also World War II flying ace. So, because of COVID, we can't be celebrating in person, but there you have it. And just as a side note, Tony, or say again, Stocky will be turning 100 years old this June. And so I'd like to acknowledge that we are in KFN territory. And we do have an amendment to the agenda, resolution to exclude the public. So if we could have a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it.
And all in favor? Okay, thank you. And now the adoption of the agenda. Move.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. We only have the one delegation. Haley Dewhurst has postponed her delegation. So we have Sergeant Bill Webb, retired, talk to us about the matching fund grant for homeless veterans study. So Bill, I see you there in the red. You have 10 minutes. Please go ahead. And if you have any questions, we'll have them for you at the end.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the town of Comox for allowing us to present today. So I'm going to speak briefly, and then I'm going to allow Councillor Scott Harrison to say a few words on the council's Qualicum Beach side of how things are going. So the issue that we're facing right now within our community in the Comox Valley and the Oceanside area is that there's a higher number of homeless veterans. Based on the numbers provided by Veterans Affairs of only 5, I have been able to identify 14 homeless veterans in the last year. And based on the latest homeless count for the Comox Valley of 132, veterans potentially make up more than 10% of that number. So a little bit of background. So in early 2020, our Member of Parliament from Courtenay, Alberni, Gord Johns, called a meeting at Qualicum Legion to discuss veterans and how we can better provide services to them, especially the ones that are homeless. And then a second, more comprehensive meeting was held in April of 2020 with representatives from the town of Qualicum and the legions from the Comox Valley to discuss moving forward with a needs assessment and a study to obtain hard data on the numbers of homeless veterans in our community and how we can provide temporary and transitional housing to them and their families that are in need. So our aim is to have all 4 local levels of government here in the Comox Valley support our efforts in line with the town of Qualicum Beach. They've committed to identify research priorities and to contribute to the knowledge and solutions to ending veterans homelessness. This was laid out in the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, as well as in the National Housing Strategy and the Legion Command's action plan to end homelessness. We're also moving to fall in line with the coalition, the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, and the CRD's plan so that we can meet the needs not of the broader community as well when it comes to veterans homelessness. So we have support right now from all 3 Comox Valley Legions, Cumberland Branch 28 and Branch 160, as well as Qualicum, Parksville, and Bowser. Our plan is to ultimately provide transitional supportive housing and permanent housing for homeless and near homeless veterans in our community. Veterans are among the hidden homeless in our community that's been identified in all 4 civic governments' homeless initiative, and they rarely identify for a number of reasons. They're either embarrassed, they don't think they qualify because they're either a reservist or they think they didn't serve long enough in the military, or they didn't go overseas on an operational tour. So they're not identifying as homeless. What we're doing moving forward with our proposal for a study for Oceanside, Comox Valley, fits in with the CVRD, town of Comox, Courtenay, and Cumberland's plan with their best practices and guiding principles. We want to move forward with a continuum of housing options that are needed in our community. The collaboration among service providers. Some of you I met today at the Coalition to End Homeless Committee meeting. To have a client-centered approach to providing housing and the needs and to meet their needs. Prevention is another one, and the public awareness and community building, which has been going on for the last year. So the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs and the National Housing Strategy and Legion Command have identified the need for a homeless study and to track homeless veterans, yet nothing's been planned for this. So the recommendations that were put forth to the federal government have kind of been shelved. We had the document was tabled, presented to government, and then we had an election. So we're not sure where that study and where those recommendations are right now. So all the local legions have come together to do the work here at the local level to meet our needs because there's so many homeless veterans in our community. So our objective is to draw on the current and proposed research that's at hand right now and what we're proposing for research, to draw upon the best practices that are already in place in some Canadian communities through our partners that provide certain services for housing to veterans, and to extend those best practices here in our community in the Comox Valley. So we're driven to provide an integrated service response to homeless veterans in our community, and we can't do that without the support of the town of Comox. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Harrison.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Mr. Webb. I really appreciate all your hard work. Bill's basically a rock star in this field. He's done a ton of hard work on his own, and we'd be lucky if we had someone like that in our area. So I'm a counselor with the town of Qualicum Beach. Thank you very much for your time. We've done a couple of things in conjunction with the local Legion and with the Courtenay branch as well. So firstly, we did some of the heavy lifting with the CMHC grant application. Unfortunately, that recent grant application was unsuccessful, but there are other grants available, and we hope to apply to them in due course. As well, as a municipality, we offered up matching funds for the first $3,000 of funds that are raised for this project, whether through under the auspices of a CMHC grant or from some other funding stream. This way, if the local Legion raises $3,000, they have essentially $6,000 to fund the study. Bill has done a lot of hard work as well, trying to connect with academics who have a relevant background in this area to ensure that the study is done in a way which isn't just, how should I say this, that's done in a way which is academically defensible and is able to go to higher levels of government with solid data to actually verify this, as opposed to running off of what happens unfortunately in our area, but folks like to use anecdotes a little. And it's tough to get dollars when you just have a few people saying we have a bigger problem than the point in time count seems to indicate. As well, I want to highlight that in our area in particular, the point in time counts is likely significantly undercounting the number of homeless individuals. That, coupled with the reticence of veterans to self-identify during these exercises, can lead to an undercounting in a significant case for veterans, but also for the broader homeless population. So this is something where I feel that our community would have strong support. We have a resolution as well of council saying that we're going to work in conjunction with other levels of government to try to end veterans homelessness. And now we're trying to put meat to that. So it's not just a resolution which sits on the books and sounds lovely, but actually is identifiable actions that we can point to saying, this is what we tried to do to accomplish those goals. In the immediate term, I would suggest that looking at, I understand as local governments, we're all really struggling with our budgets. This is a really hard year to look at any sort of funding allocation, but maybe just in the back of your mind, consider that something like what the town of Qualicum Beach did with matching funding might be a way to allow fundraising efforts for the Legion to go further to address this. It is something which I feel has broad public support, and it is something which I think it fits an identifiable need, which unfortunately, because they're veterans, they don't fit into funding models through BC Housing. And the federal funding isn't quite there yet. So it's this weird gap in the A Place to Call Home strategy from the national housing strategy, but also too from the provincial responses to homelessness more broadly. So this is something where we've had informal discussions about offering up the use of land potentially if we could get funding from BC Housing or Veterans Affairs Canada or another federal agency to address. But it's something where the first step was finding out how many veterans are there, What are their needs? What are their backgrounds? Are we dealing with a Korean War vet who simply can't afford his rent? Are we dealing with an Afghan vet who's dealing with PTSD? Who are we helping? How much help do they need? And then we can look at the facility to suit their needs. And I guess I know we're probably running close to 10 minutes now, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Is there any questions from council? Councillor Minions, and then Grant.
Thanks, Sergeant Webb and Scott. I'm just curious if we're the first delegation you have gone to from Cumberland and Courtenay. I know the Legions have supported. Is this the first municipal council group that you've gone to?
It is. You're first on the list, soon to be followed by the CVRD and Area Services Committee and the Cumberland next week.
Okay, thank you. And is it, when we say Oceanside, has Parksville committed to funds as well? Because just looking at it, it's looking like the 3,000 request is for town of Comox, and then the other municipalities would be separate. Is Parksville on board with the matching in Oceanside?
Parksville hasn't been approached yet. That's in the works right now with Branch 76 and the local Parksville Legion branch down there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good initiative. I like the passion that you're putting towards this. I'm wondering, I was unclear when you were talking about grants. You said that you had applied for one and didn't get it, and there's others in the works. And typically what we do with these is refer them to our budget, which, as you know, is upcoming. And I'm wondering if there's an urgency here, or if you've applied for a grant, or if you have, when those would come due. Gives us a little bit of a timeline here.
So unfortunately, we weren't successful with the CMHC grant. We're in the process of applying for through Veterans Affairs through the Veterans Wellbeing Fund. That grant is to a maximum of $250,000. We're not sure where we're going to be with that. That grant has to be submitted by Monday. We do have a rough draft proposal for the study plan that's been submitted to some academics at the psychology department at VIU. So if and when they're ready to move ahead, we do need to start actively funding a study.
Thank you. Yeah, Scott, you had your hand up? Did you?
Yes, my apologies. If I may, I just want to add to one thing that sort of really impressed me during this process. One of the reasons I'm putting a bit of my spare time, because this is technically my third council meeting today, is that our MP Gord Johns, when we had the meeting on January the 18th, I believe, usually for these sorts of meetings, you'll get your parliamentary assistant to show up. They'll take notes and they'll just throw you in the loop. He actually showed up himself and made sure to take the time. And his parliamentary assistant is very active on this file, sending emails back and forth the day of. So it does have the eyes. And with Rachel Blaney in North Island being the Veterans Affairs critic, I do think that there is attention from the offices of both MPs in the North Island and Central Island. So there's a reason to be a little bit more optimistic about funding in the long term than there might be for something that was just strictly a regional initiative that didn't have that same attention in Ottawa.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It is a great initiative, and wish you all of luck. And as Councillor Grant said, that this will be brought to our budget process in the near future.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Okay, so we have the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes from January 13th.
Move.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Okay, thank you. And the public hearing meeting minutes from January 20th for adoption.
Move.
Second.
And any questions on that? None. Okay, that's carried. We have the council committee meeting minutes and reports from the strategic planning on January 20th for receipts.
Move.
Second.
Questions on that? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Down to committee recommendations. We have, this is in three parts, a grant application through the FCM Municipal Asset Management Program that council directs staff to apply for grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management, and this is for
I'll move that.
assessment. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any questions on that? All in favor? Carried. Second part, the council commit to undertaking sanitary sewer condition assessments as proposed.
Move.
Move.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the third part, and further, that council commits towards $10,000 of the sanitary
Move.
inflow.
Second.
Okay, and this will be out of our operating budget. And any questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. And another grant application, investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. That's a COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream. The council authorizes staff to proceed with the application. That's the Comox Avenue sidewalk extension, south side between Rodello Street and Ellis Street.
Okay, I'll move both ends of that.
Okay, and the second part was that the town will fund from its general reserves any cost of the project which is ineligible for reimbursement. So we have a mover, seconder on that.
Second.
Any questions? No questions. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then the Northeast Comox Stormwater Management Plan implementation. This is the post-public consultation that we had from January 20th. That's option 3. So prepare the Northeast Comox Stormwater Management Plan implementation.
I'll move it.
Okay,
Second.
any questions on that? All in favor? Okay, and that administration consider technical submissions which may alter the requirements such as slope and so on,
Move.
considering the needs. Okay,
Second.
any questions? Councillor Bissinger?
So basically this just allows developers to come up with like a bit of a change of a solution if they want to propose something else. Is that basically it?
Is it more to do with slope, isn't it? CAO is gonna speak.
Yeah, that's right. So we understand that McElhaney Engineering has taken a look at this and have some suggestions. So we're expecting the submissions to come from them. But if the developers were to get the required professionals, they could make their individual submissions as well.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the 5-to-1 slope to, such as the one at Lazo and Guthrie is a 3.5-to-1 slope. So
Yeah.
they can come up with that.
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
some slope, and then there's a
Yeah.
few other little issues that,
Right.
that we may have a submission on. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, perfect. And that makes just the overall detention pond kind of smaller because the slope isn't there as much. So,
Correct.
all right, no other questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so we're down to the consent agenda. So we have recommendations 1 through 9. So first we need a motion to adopt them all.
Move.
Second.
And all in favor? Okay, carried. And now do we have anyone who wants to take any of those items out? Councillor Bissinger.
I'll take item 3 out for sure, please.
Item 3, Councillor McGowan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, can I take out item 2 and 5 as well? Just for discussion?
Let me just go up some. So 2 and 5. Okay, so all in favor of, or I guess we had a motion. Yeah, okay. So we'll start with number 3. So
Yeah, so you should just take it one at a time or one person's motions.
Right.
Pass that motion for discussion, and if it passes, then you enter into
right.
discussion.
So Council Bissinger pulled number 3, so I'm guessing she moved it. We need a seconder for that one. Okay,
second.
and for discussion now. Go
Okay.
ahead, Council Bissinger.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, over the past week or two, I've talked to quite a bit of residents in that neighborhood. And one of the things that came out was, despite the traffic study demonstrating that maybe there aren't any, speed concerns, or that 85% of the actual cars that were driving through there were within the limits. I know the actual neighborhood feels that they still want something to happen. So I had quite a few chats. I know speed humps was sort of like what they've recommended 3, or what they've requested. and, you know, following that, I kind of spoke to Shelley Ashfield for quite a while about speed humps and whether or not that's the preferable way forward. I know the neighborhood is concerned with all sorts of things, from parking to speeding to, you know, more traffic going down Buena Vista as it is connecting, you know, the Anderton and Church Street corridors. So speaking with Shelley Ashfield, I know we sort of came up, well, she was, I don't know, maybe guiding me into different approaches to this, but I think we need to have a greater look at this whole area. And I think there needs to be some community consultation. I'm not saying that speed humps is the way to go. Maybe it is a cheap fix to make the neighborhood happy. I don't know if that's a long-term solution in terms of, you know, the master plan for that area. But from discussions I've had, I think we could do, if we directed staff to go into more of a community discussion about it. And also I know in our budget, we have $500K allocated for sidewalks, but, you know, there's the argument whether or not sidewalks is just going to increase the speed of traffic, because all of a sudden there's that barrier between pedestrians and cars, therefore giving that false sense of security to pedestrians and to vehicular traffic. So I think we need to, you know, there's been a lot of changes in that neighborhood. We've had the cannabis shops on both ends. We've had the tap house. We've had parking issues. We have, you know, speed or not speed, I guess. So I think it's just time that we look at a community consultation, and maybe I would put even a motion forward for that if council would agree to that. But I think we need to chat with those residents and see, you know, is it a matter of just redefining that whole cross section of the street and going towards what the town standard is for that cross section, reducing the street width, having sidewalks, having parking, and just doing a full overhaul versus just spending $500,000 to me, which is fiscally irresponsible if we're just putting sidewalks without looking at the big picture and without getting the residents involved, because maybe that's not exactly desirable. So I'll leave it up to you guys for discussion, and I'd be happy to make that motion, sort of to direct staff to engage with the community going forward if that stands.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I believe it was a $50,000 review of it this year, and then the amount next year. Councillor McKenna, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Bissinger that we need to look at it because it definitely is an issue. One of the things that, again, I've been looking a lot about as we walk around town and looking at the speed of traffic, et cetera, and we're looking at Anderton, you know, we're really increasing the density of housing on Anderton. And so it's going to force cut throughs for people as they're coming home, et cetera. You know, it's interesting just to note that both Noel and Rob have a 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. Now, obviously, the school and the fire station plays into that, but I don't see any reason at all why we couldn't just move to 30 kilometers an hour on Buena Vista. Simple solution, and we're away, you know? So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I know back years ago, I'm dating myself, was when the liquor store went into where Scorpio's is right now. And then that caused some traffic down there, and there was a bit of a concern, and then that died off, and then the hairdresser, and now with Church Street. So it does come and go. But nevertheless, there is some concerns brought up. Councillor Grant, you have—
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we go to community consultation and do all that, I'd like to get a report from Shelley, just outlining some of the options and what could be done there. I know Cumberland is going to 30 kilometers throughout their community. You know, it's a bit of a slippery slope when you go into a neighborhood, because over the years you get a lot of these kinds of requests in neighborhoods, and I know that speed humps aren't always considered the best way. So I'd like to see what it is before we go out and ask the public, because they don't always have the technical understanding of what's needed. So if we have a little bit more knowledge going in, that might be a better way to do it.
Okay, thanks. And I do believe to Shelley Ashfield, there was a speed study done recently, wasn't there, on Buena Vista?
Yeah, we had the traffic tubes out for a number of days, I believe 10, and the analysis or the outcome of that was 85 percentile of the traffic was traveling at 53 kilometers an hour.
53. Okay, thanks. All right. Any other? Councillor Bissinger, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, and I guess maybe, like, just speaking with Shelley earlier, I know, you know, maybe a temporary solution would be to just put those speed boards up just to get people to slow down. But I know, just following Councillor Grant's comment. I know some of the parts from the actual policy for the town traffic calming policy, part of it would be Shelley would do a presentation to the different stakeholders, so probably to the community, go over like the different options, you know, explain how speed humps maybe aren't the most desirable approach because they create more sound, create more greenhouse gas emissions as people are like slowing down, stopping, picking up again, or maybe like screeching their tires, or people speed up to them or whatever and so forth. So that's kind of all part of that. So I don't know if Shelley, you wanted to, you know, chime in right away. But I'd feel comfortable directing staff to look into it further, even though the study said that everything's kosher. I think we definitely need to give more attention to this area. So, you know, if I need to make a motion to direct staff to look at a, you know, potential, I guess, looking at options and furthermore discussing with the community, then I will do that.
So what was that last part? You won't do that?
No, I will. Like that's my motion if I can, or.
Okay. So that's your motion. Then we'd need a seconder on that
Second that.
motion. And then, so
Could you just repeat what the motion was? Was that to get staff to give us some more?
Yeah, to get staff to give us some more options. And I guess step 2 of that would be to engage the community as required and then come up with options to council, and then council would make a decision on it.
Okay, so you got 3 motions there from what I can hear. I'd be good with the first part of that, which is the staff report, and then move along from there.
right. So are you okay with that, Councilor Bissinger, a staff report? And then
I mean,
from that we go deeper.
I think, you know, like sure, a staff report, but I know we've had a staff report based on the traffic study. So I don't want the staff report just to say, you know, it's within the speed limit. So I want to sort of define what that staff report would look at, would be, you know, different options for Buena Vista, looking at sidewalks, speed bumps, any traffic calming measures, you know, what the long-term plan is for Buena Vista, and then having some sort of community engagement afterwards based on those options.
Yeah, Councillor McKenna, just 1 second. Yeah, so Councillor Bissinger, duly noted. What we were just kind of chomping on here is perhaps we discuss this further, make a proper motion, and then bring it to staff. So are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure. Or if it's easier to just do the part 1, just to direct staff to look at various options, if that'll get things going instead of having it to.
CAO wants to say something.
Yeah, so just in general with your council procedure bylaw, when you're into correspondence, you generally want to bring any motions through a notice of motion or seek the unanimous consent
Right.
of council in order to bring it. Council can go either direction, so we can go back and create and draft a motion. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is to make sure that when the motions come, they are precise and are the language council wants. And the other reason is to ensure that councillors have the time to consider the motions prior to making decisions on them. So new items that may come up and you may not be prepared to make the vote. So you do have a couple options in front of you right now. One would be
Sure.
To unanimously decide that you're ready to move on this issue right now. And the other would be to maybe craft a motion, bring it back, have it on the agenda, and then make the decision at the next meeting.
Okay, so in that case, I guess to get unanimous support, maybe it would just be to direct staff to look at different options for traffic calming for Buena Vista.
Sorry, we had an intruder. Okay, so that is that's your request. Is not necessarily a motion at this time. And Councillor McKenna, you got your hand up.
Yeah, we're still in the discussion stage. Yes.
Well, we're trying to peel back this this motion here.
Yeah, I'll be voting against any motion because I'm unclear as to the motion and the reasoning for it. And I'd really like more time to think about it. But that being said, like, are there other traffic studies being done in the town of Comox at the moment?
CAO, maybe to planning or operations.
Yeah, Shelley can comment, but we've routinely, but not regularly, we'll go out and check speeds based on complaints. So I don't know if we have any going right now, but it's regular for us if we get a complaint from the public about speed for us to go out and put those, to go out and measure the speed and be able to respond back to them. But Shelley can comment if we have any active right now.
None at the moment, no.
So thank you, Shelley. So, and thanks, Jordan. For my reasoning for that question is, I don't want to go out and solve street by street by street on every council meeting. I think we need a proactive approach to this. And so if we're going to send staff to do a report on Buena Vista, I think we really need to do and look at it more holistically. Like we should be doing a report for the whole of Comox and deciding what we really want to do here. And that sounds to me like I'm not making a motion, I'm just making a comment. You know, if we look at Buena Vista, then, you know, now we got to look at Stewart Street. Man, it's really busy on Stewart Street. Holy cow. And so, you know, I agree and I have empathy for everybody that is facing these traffic concerns, but I think we need to look holistically at the whole of Comox and you know, to Councillor Grant's earlier point of Cumberland, which I didn't know about, reducing their speed limits to 30. You know, maybe that's something that all of Comox Council needs to look at is, you know, how we're going to regulate the speed of vehicles in our community. So I'll leave it there.
Okay.
CAO.
I just wanted to make a note that council added to your strategic plan for staff to provide a report on the speeding overall within the community. And so that is not something we've quite yet started, but it is on our list of things to do.
And Councillor Bissinger, you had your hand up there?
Yeah, I was just saying, just based on Councillor McKenna's comments, so obviously no unanimous support. So I think I'll just prep something and maybe do another motion for another meeting then.
Okay, thank
As
you.
CAO recommended.
Would it make sense for Councillor Bissinger to give us a notice of motion, in which time she's then got the chance to drop a motion that's maybe more concise and everybody knows what's going on, and then we could move it from there? Because I have to tell you, I'm quite surprised when 85%, the average is 53 kilometers on that road. That seems really fast to me, to be honest with you. You know, I know it's within our speed limit, but that seems like, you know, that's a small little road. That seems really quick to me, so.
Okay. All right, any further questions on this?
I'll just make one more
Councillor
comment if I
McKenna.
could.
Yeah.
Councillor Grant, you're absolutely right. And I think if you did that traffic study on most of our Comox roads, you will find that that 85th percentile of speeding is probably on most. I don't know if it's just me getting older, but the traffic is definitely moving faster. And in most cases, that what I witness, it's very unsafe. So I think overall, we probably need to look at it as a whole community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we do not have a motion. Are you okay with that, Councillor Bissinger? And this is still through the strategic planning? And
Sure, yeah, I mean, if I need to do a notice of motion for consideration next time, that's fine too.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of that? Of doing nothing, yeah. Okay, that's carried, thanks. So the next was Councillor McGowan wanted number 2 pulled out. That is the email regarding Beckton Road traffic problems. Go ahead, Councillor McGowan.
Same kind of thing, just curious. The conversation that we were having before kind of blends right into this one, although this isn't so much about speeding, but parking on the side and visibility issues, which I can relate to. It's so I was just wondering what was going on with the no parking signs and with that area, because it sounds like they've been moved around, and just was hoping for further clarification on what's going on there.
Yeah, I'll turn this over to the CAO in a second, but I do believe that on Beckton, that is the east-west part there where the parking went down to 2 spots, and that seemed to appease some residents, but then it upset some others. So I don't know, CAO, I know we spoke about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as part of the increased development that's happening there, we took a look and did a traffic safety study. We had complaints about visibility and the increased traffic pulling off onto the different roads. And through that study, it was recommended that a few parking spots be removed to increase visibility, and that's what has been done. So we're comfortable that the decisions we've made are in line with proper safety procedures and in keeping the public, again, safe when they're making the turns onto the main road there.
All right, perfect. That's,
And
Councillor Grant.
this has been ongoing for many years. It doesn't seem to matter what you do. You make half of them happy and the other half aren't. I don't know that there's a proper solution, but if you go right back to the beginning, there was no parking on Beckton as you came down there. At some point, the signs came down. I'm not sure. Nobody seems to know when or how
I think
that
in the middle of
happened.
the night one day.
I think so, yeah. And then everybody started parking everywhere, and that's so, you know, the argument last time was to go back to what it originally was. Well, that didn't make anybody happy. So I think the solution that we've got, and we've gone through this many, many times, is probably the best we've had so far anyway. So everything else just seems to make somebody else angry.
Right. Okay. Any other further questions, comments on this? So all in favor of that? All right, that's carried. Thanks. And then we had number 5, and that was the Life Force Foundation regarding Comox Valley Sewage Commission pollution plans. Councillor McGowan, you want to speak to that again?
yeah, I was just hoping to clarify from whoever was on that board at the time why the decision was made to go with secondary as opposed to tertiary, and what the reasoning behind that was.
Councillor Swift, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a recommendation that came out of the Liquid Waste Management Plan. And the Liquid Waste Management Group was made up of somewhere between 23 and 28 people, broad cross-section of the community, individuals, staff, Chamber of Commerce, shellfish growers, and on it went. So it's pretty broad group. And there was a KFN representative that attended a number of meetings, and then KFN wanted to have their own consultation process. So they met individually with the Sewage Commission and staff at the CVRD. So it was a pretty broad group, and they considered many criteria, some economic, environmental, and social. And at the end of the day, our plant as it stands, it's not dumping raw sewage. So I know in part of their materials, they were suggesting it was raw sewage that was going out. It is not raw sewage that is going out. And our plant as it stands today is even well above what we are required to do. When we were coming around to considering some options, we came to the option of number 2 because it provides all the flow to be treated to a certain level, and it's still going to be a high level. And let me just see what my notes say. The other piece of that is, as the plant is developed, it can go to the next level if it's required or if it seems to be desirable. So I know in the letter they were talking about $121 per household. That's simply for the treatment. So the cost of the sewage service, if you like, is really becoming quite high because we've got our own, $391 for sewage, then treatment is $121, plus that doesn't include the conveyance piece, which we don't know exactly how much that's going to cost, but it's going to be really expensive. So as it stands, there was about a $9 million difference between having the option number 2 and option number 3. And so it was going to be not enough of a difference to warrant that level. And I don't know, Shelley was there as well. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Shelley.
No, I think that was a great summary. The secondary treatment to removal for the organics was 90% removal. And for the microplastics for secondary was 80 to 95. To doing the advanced, you would go from 95 to 97. So very marginal increase of what you'd get for the cost. And at the same time, it was noted through discussions with the consultants that that margin of improvement was pretty negligible of what that would do to the environment. So the benefit as well was not noted as well. So for the amount of the savings or the organics removal and microplastics was pretty marginal for the increase in the cost.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
would it be safe to say that that you're going with secondary until such time as tertiary is necessary and actually helpful to the situation? Because it doesn't sound like for the amount of money that would be spent, it would be as a big difference in what it's taking out.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And also it's economic. The plant will be built in such a way as it can be added on later. So if grants became available suddenly or something like that, we could easily do that if it was desirable at that time.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Anything further, Councillor McGowan? Councillor, yeah. Go ahead, McGowan, sorry.
We lost Councillor Bissinger there for a minute. Shelley, do you mind going over the numbers again on the difference in microplastics and organics between the secondary and tertiary?
Sure, yeah, the secondary treatment for the organics removal is 90%. Microplastics is between 80 to 95. The advanced treatment for the organics removal is 96%, and the microplastics is 95 to 97. So the improvement is very marginal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McKenna, did you still have a comment? Question?
Yeah, I do, and I'll just readily admit I fully don't understand sewage treatment. But I see the difference between 80 and 97 quite substantial. My question, I guess, to Councillor Swift or to Shelley is that it could be added on at a later date. What is the cost up front, and what is the cost to add it on at a later date? It seems like if when it's cheaper to build a brand new building than it is to retrofit one. And so I don't know if that stands in sewage treatment. And so that's my question, I guess.
Well, Shelley would probably be able to answer this easier. Of course, it would be cheaper to do it today than it would, 10, 15 years from now. It looks to me like these are just disc filters. So it's not, it doesn't look to me, of course, I'm not an engineer, that it would be a big undertaking to add it on. It's about a $9 million difference in the cost today.
So is that a 30% increase to the total project?
Well, we haven't got the cost of the total project. It would be about 29.7 million to do the secondary with the disinfection, and about 38 to do the tertiary treatment or the number 3 option.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGowan, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I'm just thinking about the comment and the thought of, passing, like it's expensive now, it's going to be expensive later as well. And I don't think we're going to have to stop protecting our environment or go backwards on that. We're going to have to go forward and forward. So I'm just hoping that we're not passing on passing the buck, if you will, by just, doing this now to save ourselves some money, and then, allowing the ocean to just
Be a catch basin
receive
for
all the
effluent.
plastic. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that when we developed the criteria, there was technical, environmental, economic, and social, and all of them had different weightings and so on. So it wasn't purely an economic decision.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other further comments or questions on that? So all in favor of this? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. So Councillor Minions, you had your hand up? Okay, well, we just had 3, 2, and 5. So, and you had one you'd like to pull out?
Yes, just number 7 briefly.
Number 7. Okay, so mover and a seconder. So she's moving at seconder for
That's
this?
on Steve Hill on the wood burning fireplaces being health hazard.
Right. So a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly check in. We talked about it wasn't during the winter time, so it's now a little more apparent and we're getting more emails about this. But at some point we talked about the possibility of how we look at wood burning incorrectly or, bad burning to be something that would be a nuisance. And at the time we don't have the staff to be able to bring back that report, but other communities were looking at that. So it's something that I plan on following up, but it was also on the staff radar of kind of checking in how that could become something that's a nuisance and potentially bylawed. So I'm just wondering if there's any, if anyone's heard any updates from Courtney or CVRD on if there's any potential things we can do, because it is definitely a health hazard in certain days in the winter.
Okay, Councillor Swift, you have your hand up?
Thank you. As part of my CVRD report later in this meeting, I was going to talk about the wood smoke reduction program. There are now $67,500 available in rebates. Last year, there were 35 rebates amounting to about $32,000. And so the problem is with COVID and so on, they're not really having a really good rollout of this program. So they're a bit reliant on word of mouth as well as the website and so on. They're trying to align with the Airshed Roundtable and Clean Better BC and the retrofit market acceleration strategy. So there are some efforts being made at the CVRD level. I know it doesn't, I know when I'm out walking, I'm smelling smoke all over the place now. I guess it's winter and the weather conditions. So I don't know if there's anything else we can do at our table to move this along a little faster.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, if staff doesn't have a report on Courtney, I'll just follow up and find out. It was supposed to be December or January, but it might be delayed. So I'll follow up on that.
And CAL?
I believe it's been delayed, but I'll follow up as well. Right now, the town of Comox allows the replacement of wood burning with wood burning fireplaces as long as it's an upgrade on efficiency. One thing the town could look at considering if you want to move the phase out of this quicker is to not allow the replacement with wood burning and force people to get a different energy source. Those are the real type of changes. Otherwise, there are the type of incentives that the CVRD is doing. We could start providing those financial incentives if the town wanted. They can get a little bit expensive, but those are probably going to be the two best ways to move people off is, well, 3 options really: not allow them after a certain amount of time, not allow them to be replaced at all, regardless of efficiency, or for the town to develop its own rebate program.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, and I think the Airshed Roundtable it's gotten off to a bit of a slow start, but I think they're finding their way now, and I think they're going to be bringing some recommendations and ideas to us as we move along here. So I think we're a little initial in that, but I expect to hear more from them in the not too distant future.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions, comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And no other desire to pull anything else out. So we will move on to unfinished business, the strategic planning and action items from February 3rd for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Questions on that? All in favor? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. Bylaw adoptions. We have the Comox zoning amendment bylaw 1939 that be given 3rd reading.
Move.
Second.
Any questions on that? All in favor?
Move
Carried.
adoption.
And that we move adoption. And a seconder for that?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Carried.
And will we issue the permit?
Okay, seconder for that?
Second.
Okay. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. New business, we have the capital and special projects for 2021. So what I'd like to do is move Schedule A for adoption.
I'll move it.
Okay,
Second.
seconder. Okay, and we will discuss it. So, Schedule A. Want to go through it line by line, or has council looked at it earlier and want to pull things out? CAO, this is your bailiwick. How would you like us to proceed on this?
So with the grouping of them in schedules, you don't need to go through and approve them line by line.
Okay.
You'd approve them as a group. So I would say it might be more efficient and hone your discussion in better for councillors to bring up specific projects for which you want to have a discussion on. But that is up to you on how you want to proceed.
Okay, so Councillor McKenna, and then I think I saw Bissinger's hand up.
Yeah, so I just want to, first of all, this agenda was a beast. I'll just state that right straight out. I've been on this agenda now for 4 days, and I don't feel I'm super prepared on the capital budget stuff, which really actually just makes me uncomfortable. So I'm going to state that outright. Could I get an explanation of what the specific ask is, a verbal explanation of what the specific ask is tonight on this? I know that the green represents pre-approved and the pale blue, is that the specific ask of money to be spent? Because that will determine some of my questions.
So the only items that staff are asking you to approve to move forward right now are the items in green. Those are the items for pre-approval. Everything else is here for discussion for you guys to talk about and move forward to be included in your financial plan. Staff is planning to ask for approval on all of these items during the first meeting in March. So that it would be the first regular meeting in March, we will be asking for approval to move forward on all of the projects. So you're not here to make final decisions today, although I would strongly encourage council to ask the questions that you may have and have a good, healthy debate on items. If you're able to come to final decisions on items that you don't want to move forward with, it would be great to have them removed now. Now, the items in blue, those are there to indicate items for which external funding is going to pay for or is a carryover. So the idea behind that is to show council what is the amount of money that's being requested that would need to be funded out of new taxes or pulled from our reserves. So for example, if a project in blue is being funded by a grant, that's not money you're going to have to bring out of reserves or taxation in order to pay for. Or if the money is in blue because it's a carryover, it's something that you funded in the previous year. So the idea of highlighting things in blue as well as pink is to show that those items are not making a demand on the income that you have coming in this year or the money that you have saved in the bank.
Okay, and I do want to note that the CAO, when he sent this out on Friday, he did make himself available over the weekend and throughout the beginning of this week, if anyone did want to discuss it. So
yeah, duly noted, Mayor. And I was gonna, thank CAO Wall for that. But honestly, like this agenda was a monster agenda, and so a lot of this capital stuff is so important. I'm glad for the verbal explanation because it just helps me make decisions. Like, when I look at foreshore cleanup, $600,000, I'm like, good Lord, like, what is that? And so I can't approve something that I don't actually know why it would cost $600,000 to do that. And it feels like I'm spending taxpayer money by raising my hand tonight.
No. I mean, you know what? We can be here all night if you like. But again, the CAO was willing to spend his weekend to help people out. But I understand, we all have challenges with our time. But you know, here we are, and we'll spend the night until we get through this. CAO wanted to make a comment, and then Councillor Grant.
Yeah, just on those items. So the items in blue, so the cleanup on are you talking about the derelict vessel cleanup, Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'm not pulling specific items out
Okay.
right now. I was just using it as an example. And you know, Mayor, I appreciate the comment on my time management, but you know, I'm about 9, 8, 10 hours on this agenda so far. And so, you know, maybe I should have set aside 20. But you know, I just feel like I don't, as I mentioned, I don't want to spend the taxpayers' money on something that I don't feel ready to spend it on. So I thank you for the verbal explanation. Yeah.
I'll leave that alone. Okay, Councillor Grant.
I just wanted to be clear, so the items.
Can't hear you.
So I think the items in blue, green, and pink, I understand pretty fully. The white is still to be funded?
So white, the items in white are items that are not funded from a external source or haven't been funded already from a previous year. So those would be projects that need to be funded either from tax money coming in this year or from reserves.
Okay. Okay,
Now-
okay, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as general information, as we move through asset management, I expect when we submit the capital and special projects budgets moving forward, that we are going to start to see a much greater amount of pink throughout these, because a lot of what we're doing is just repairing the current asset. So as we get asset management on board, which is hopefully going to take a really, really big steps that you're going to notice by the end of the year, most of these will be coming the next time in pink. But it's also going to mean that more money needs to be set aside every year, and we're going to have those discussions. And so this one, I know when you're looking at it, it might take you look at it and you go, well, there's not a heck of a lot of pink and there's not a heck of a lot of blue and there's a whole bunch of white. As we move into next year, that's going to flip on its head. So this is what I'm hoping to do this year, is to just start to maybe give a little bit of an introduction as to what this is going to look like should council approve moving forward with the asset management plans for the future.
Councillor Bissinger.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to pull out the Buena Vista sidewalks, but that's sort of in conjunction to the discussion we had. So I know we have 500K earmarked for sidewalks, but maybe if we can just earmark it for whatever the solution might be. I think, I mean, I'm okay with everything that's green and blue. I think I'd be comfortable approving those tonight for sure.
Okay, so in the green, we have the Knoll Avenue resurfacing. And this is, as we go through schedules A, B, C, and D, we'll see that there's different components of that. So while this is the resurfacing, the other ones are the subsurface of this. So we are looking for pre-approval of $145,000 for this one. Councillor Grant?
Yeah, so I guess I was looking at some of the things in white, and I'm looking at our budget, and of course, we don't really have a good feel for what kind of tax increase we're looking at this year, or maybe we won't have an increase, maybe it'll go down, but I doubt it. But, you know, you have to keep in mind too that the CVRD is not bringing out real big tax increases this year, but they are going to add like $280 per household for the new water treatment plant. The sewer, as Councillor Swift alluded to, is right behind that. And then we've got our policing, which is a big increase on top of that. And so when I look at our plan and I see all of the white areas on year 5 of the plan, like you've got Church Street upgrade for $1.9 million. And then there's a whole page here somewhere that of course I can't find it when I want it, but of paving projects. And it looks like resurfacing for the most part. And I think it was on page 90. There it is, 93. So down the bottom, you've got a whole litany of things. And I think the total of those are over $3 million if you include Church Street in there. And I'm wondering if you were to take some of those and knock them off the plan, like put them off for a year or 2 years, I don't think that the streets are going to change a whole lot in 2 years. And yet it would really be, it would really help out the financial planning at the other end of this, because I mean, that's a lot of money in a plan for resurfacing. And I know that we have a standard that we're trying to set, but perhaps we're being a little too aggressive. in certain cases. Like I'm looking at these streets and I notice you've got like Totem Court, Totem Crescent. You know, they're not in horrible shape. You know, they seem fine to me, to be honest with you. And so, I'm just looking at all of those and wondering, if they really need to be in this plan, or if we could kick them out for a year or two to ease the blow.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. That's going to lead into the conversations we're having on asset management. So when you take a look at the projects that are projected 5 years out and not to start for 5 years, I wouldn't get too worried about those. Those are going to need to be reevaluated, and we'll make decisions. And if the roads are in great condition, or any of the assets are still in great condition, we're projecting 5 years out, those will change. But to your point of whether or not we are replacing the roads and resurfacing them at the right time is a great conversation to have, because ultimately that comes down to the level of service council wants to provide to the community, and the level of service that's provided in Comox is high. And when you provide high levels of service, the cost is high. There are roads that we could look at pushing out. Now, you generally want to make sure you're repairing your roads before the issues allow moisture to get into your base, which will cause higher replacement costs later. So you don't want to save money just to spend more at a future point. But given the high levels of service that we provide on our roads right now, we could look at delaying the resurfacing of some. I wouldn't say all. There are some that we want to make sure we move through with, especially ones that are connected to the water systems and the upgrades we're doing there. But that is a conversation I'm actually going to be encouraging council to have during asset management, is to take a look at what the cost is of replacing a road, let's say at the higher, or where we would normally replace it now versus pushing it off for 2 years. What does that actually save you? And how does that impact the service levels? And how does that impact the amount of money that needs to be set aside? So if council wants to have that discussion or get that report back, we can certainly do that for the next meeting and say, here are the roads that we think really need to be done this year, possibly because it's connected to our water, or because the issues on the road have gotten to the point where we're worried about moisture getting into the basin, causing problems that'll cost more money to fix down the road. And if that's where council's headed, I would encourage us to actually head down that direction. It wasn't a conversation we were prepared to have with you right now, but it is something we're planning to have later in the year. So I guess I'm rambling a little bit here. And to sum up my points, I would say it's an excellent conversation. It's something that we need to have not only on our roads, but across all of our assets. And if council is looking specifically at the roads that we have this year and not wanting to continue to replace them at such a high service level, but instead to try and extend their lifespan to be a little bit more fiscally responsible, or to get a little bit more money out of them, I would encourage you to just pass that motion, and we can reevaluate that and bring a different set of recommended road resurfacings to you in the March meeting.
Well, I think it's important, maybe not so much for tonight's discussion, but when you're looking at year 5, you really only have to put things off 1 or 2 years. If you start pulling road resurfacing out that's next year, then you're having to move them 7 or 8 years down the road. So it makes a big difference. And it also, without knowing what kind of tax increase we're looking at, and it's hard to judge what you want to do if you don't know what that number is going to be. Like, for instance, I don't know if this Church Street upgrade in year 5 for basically $2 million isn't something that could wait. I mean, we're putting bike lanes and parking and blah, blah, blah. But that's 5 years out. If it was 7, would it matter? I don't know. And I don't know what impact that has on the budget. So I think it's important that we get a bit of an idea what we're looking at for a tax increase to begin with. And then I would like to look at not only road resurfacing, but also like some of the maintenance on buildings and stuff that we're doing. If we're going to do an asset management look, then it always concerns me, because no offense to engineers, Alex, but they have a very different view of how long things last than what sometimes reality is. Like, they'll put a road in at 25 years. Well, we don't even start looking till 40 years, right? And so if you use their numbers, you're going to get a whole different view than what a road would actually last for. So I think there's things we need to know as we do this going through, and You know, I had this same problem last year with not really knowing what it is that this big infrastructure bubble we're heading for is and what the criteria is to need replacing. So, you know, for me, without knowing that, it's really hard to say whether we need to do these things or not.
Yeah, and I think that's what part of tonight is, just throwing this out. It's awareness, it's starting discussion, and coming back and reevaluating it as we get closer to putting that number on, and then peeling it back. CAO, you want to?
Yeah, so just on the items that are projected for 5 years out, whether they're on this fiscal plan or not, it won't impact the amount of money that's required for this year. So I would say don't worry about anything that's 3 years to 5 years away. I wouldn't have almost any concern. Those numbers are there to provide an indication that here is the amount of replacement that we see coming on the future horizon. So that 5 year, those items 5 years away from now, don't worry too much. Now, to the overall point of that, we don't have a great picture on where we're going on our assets, and as well as what the lifespan on our assets are. So at the start of the process, what was used was those engineering projections and how long the assets would last. And that gives you a replacement value for an amount you have to save every year. That is a very, very high number. We've moved beyond that. We are doing our own asset projection. So we would be working, for example, on the roads and equipment. Craig and his team would be taking a look at it and saying, okay, well, that's great. This is what the average lifespan of a road is. This is what the average lifespan of this equipment is. But they go in and they put their own forecast, knowing the assets because they work on them, and knowing how long we get out of the assets in this community. So we are inputting our own data into those projections, and that's going to come out with a number that is, you know, we're looking at half the savings, or half the yearly savings amount as we were when we were just going off of the normal lifespan data. So it's a huge, huge difference, and that's going to be coming to council. And to your point as well about not knowing what we can approve and not knowing what we can't approve right now because we don't have a good picture of that. I agree with council. I'm in the same position as well, and all the staff is. And as we get towards the end of this year, we're going to have a much different picture. And so next year, if everything goes according to plan, budgeting is going to be a lot easier because we will be able to know how much money do we have left over in order to do things, you know, the nice to haves, not just the must haves. So it'll be a lot easier in that sense. It will be a lot harder in the sense that a lot of the money that we think is unallocated right now is going to become allocated, and the money left over is going to be much, much smaller. So this is, I hope, the last year we have to go through a process like this where we don't have that really good picture, and we will be able to give you an idea of where our revenue or expenses are at in the next meeting when you're making these decisions, but it still won't be to the level that you need, and I expect that to come in next year's budget.
Okay, thank you. So one of the items at hand is the Knoll Avenue resurfacing. So they are looking for pre-approval on that. So can I get a motion on that?
I'll
Are
move
we
it.
still in discussion before we take that motion?
Well, thanks, because I was wondering about that too. Do you want us to pass it as a whole, or amended, or pull these out? How would you like to proceed?
So you'll pass the whole schedule. So the whole schedule will get passed. So I believe we have a motion on the floor for Schedule A to be passed along
Correct.
with the pre-approval. So where I would ask council is now, if you don't want to grant pre-approval to a project, to make an amending motion to not grant it. So let's say on the Knoll, you don't want to grant pre-approval, make that motion. If you want to pull a project out, make the motion to pull it out.
Okay, thanks.
And those are amending motions to the main motion.
I was confused about that as well. Okay, so then any other further questions about schedule?
For
Councillor
discussion then?
Buchanan. Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, and maybe I'm wrong, so I'm just going to ask one more time for clarity. The recommendation from the CAO is that council pre-approves the items identified in Schedule A for immediate spending authority. So the further recommendations are, you know, Schedule B for immediate. So if we pass all these motions, you're asking, or you're saying council is giving you authority to spend $10 million.
No.
You would only be giving us authority to spend the items highlighted in green across the schedules. Those are the
So-
only ones that are being requested for pre-approval.
So if I look at the bottom of every schedule, it gives a list of immediate spending authority. When I total those, or it says total capital and special projects. So I guess that's what I'm looking for clarity is immediate spending authority is defined by what color?
Green.
That's the
And so,
pre-approval requested.
The
And
pre-approval
what is the
requested.
total of all the green?
I
Is it $1
apologize.
million? It's $1 million. I think I totaled the green.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. You know, and that's where I was like having very difficult time understanding it. So you're asking us tonight for approval for $1 million.
Yes.
So
And we're going to do each schedule at a time. Thank you very much.
Correct, yeah. Counselor Bissinger?
we want to just revise the motion to include the wording highlighted in green for immediate spending authority. Just so that's clear, just because the wording makes it seem like everything in Schedule A is approved for spending authority or whatever.
Thank you, Councillor Bissinger.
Yeah.
Because it does seem
Sure, I'd
confusing.
second that because it just makes it more clear.
Okay, then, okay, fine. So thank you. That does make it clear. Counselor Swift? So
Thank you.
for comments, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question about the $80,000 for the contracted planners. I know I brought that up several times and it's never been something that was of interest or at least capable or possible. So could you just speak to that one for shortly?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is bringing in a high level planner who's able to come in and take some workload off of us. So, you know, what we're looking for is not somebody who takes 30 minutes of direction in order to do 30 minutes of work. We're hoping to find somebody who can operate at the level of 10 minutes of direction and accomplish 5 hours of work. We know that there was an individual in Cumberland who has come in to help their department, and as they fill that regular spot, I'm in conversations with Cumberland to actually, because they would like to continue using that individual. So we're going to have conversations next week, if council approves this, to look at having that as a shared resource, which will bring a lot of benefits. One, it'll keep our costs down because we'll be able to share that resource, and then it will also help bring the perspective of what's happening in the departments of the other Comox Valley communities as far as development and processing and regulations go. So that's our goal, is to hire that high level individual who will be able to come in and take care of some projects for us while we're able to focus on other items. So we'd be looking especially at likely handing off some of the major development applications that we get in and having them work on those, freeing up our staff to finish off the things that were, you know, half done and being worked on as we find time. The subdivision bylaws, the implementing bylaws for Northeast Comox, and some of the other items as well.
Great, sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And just backing up a little bit, we did have a motion to change the wording of that header. So I think Councilor McKenna, you made that motion. Bissinger seconded it? Close?
In reverse, I think.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Which makes sense. Thank you very much for that. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. All right, so going back then to Schedule A, do we want to discuss anything more? This is going to be fun because we still got B, C, and D to do.
I think
Okay,
we've
so-
ironed it out now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Seeing no further comments on that, all in favor of Schedule A? And this is to pass the amendment. So then we need a motion to pass the amendment. There was no amendments to Schedule A.
No, there was no amendment.
That's right. So we're just passing it as so, and we got all in favor. Okay, great. So going down to section B, Schedule B. So move Schedule B.
Second.
Okay, and discussion.
I assume these all have the same amendments.
Yes,
To
yes,
you
they
know,
will. Thanks. Yeah,
with green, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that's all.
Yeah. So I'll
Thanks for
move that.
I'll second.
Okay, so we're all in favor of that. So we got a couple green things there. We've got the Northeast Comox Ponds, Knoll Extension again, and Knoll Storm that they're looking for pre-approval. So I'll leave it up to council for discussion. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Then I'll move number 3, which is Schedule C.
Moving Schedule C. Sorry, let me just find it on my agenda here. Okay, Schedule C. We have, so I've moved and seconded. All in favor of this? Okay. Oh, sorry, we didn't even discuss this.
Everybody went good with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just have a,
Go ahead, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the 164,000 for the computer networking and telephone upgrades, which I'm sure is needed for efficiencies. It just seems like over the years, there's been a kind of high cost around technology and communication. And I'm just wondering what the time sensitivity on that one is, and maybe 164 as an earmark is on the higher side, or maybe it's accurate, but is that something that does have to be done in the next 3 months? I feel like all the infrastructure stuff, the stormwater, all that really makes sense, but when we're not sure if our tax increase is going to be, I don't want to say any numbers, but really low or higher, that is one that to me, if it didn't have to be done, that's something that could possibly be paused, but I just want more information on that.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Clive. Clive, are you able to provide a bit of information? I believe we're part of this is there's the project's half done from the work that we've been doing last year, but Clive can comment a little bit further.
Well, we did switch from multiple domains around the town, multiple server setups and so forth, to a single structure using our fiber optics to connect our sites. There's one delay connecting to Public Works, which hopefully is remedied this month in March, and have that fully connected. But with that half built as part of the infrastructure, we do need to replace the switches. We've got a mixed bag of various quality of switches, pretty low end stuff. And just to complete the network, a lot of that 164,000 is into that. We currently don't have a generator backing up our servers, a number of other things that are deficient. And so these were requests that came in from our IT consultants back in summer, early fall of last year, and we were just waiting for a new budget year to get them approved. So they've been waiting and are really looking forward to getting some of this stuff finished so they can go on to better servicing of our network.
So Clive, maybe you can go in a little bit deeper about what the need for approval is now versus waiting for another month for approval then.
I have a very detailed look at the IT here. It's about 100 rows here, so I'll just sort of go through. Actually, maybe I can go through your list because you wrote it in your section here. The switches. So that was one thing I just alluded to. Our switches are trafficking the network between our sites. There's $100,000 in switches to replace substandard switches. This is why we're having so many delays in our network. So it's just part of getting us to the next step. So for me tonight on the terminal server working, I sent an email, couldn't get it, waiting for it to work, doing a workaround to get it. It's just to clean up those slow trafficking issues on the network. Modules, let's look at modules. I'm going to skip modules and come back to that. But our generator is, we were using a fire department generator. It was tested last year, at the beginning of last year, I believe, but actually it was a false positive. It did not work when we had our last power outage. So there's a small price tag to get that generator that can service the server room when power goes down. And I think that's mainly infrastructure systems replacement. There are some old, there's additional backup server that they're requesting. So when our servers go down, we have the ability to run from another location on a backup server. So our data now goes to the cloud, which is great, but you can't really run the network out of the cloud. it would be too slow and too encumbering. So there's a backup server that we placed at the Public Works yard, and that we'd run our network from that location should something happen to town hall servers. And that's kind of the makeup of it. I have Jordan, it would take a little bit of time to go through the long listing, but maybe I could answer questions. Would that be easier?
No, thanks, Clive. I think it sounds like the project has already kind of started and in the work. So if it was something brand new that could have waited a month, then I would have maybe gone for that. But it sounds like it's all stuff that's already partway through project. So thanks for that detailed explanation.
And to the overall point on the system, I think there has been a fairly big spike in the IT spending over the past couple of years, but we do expect that we're near the tail end of that. We don't expect to be spending near this amount of money on IT moving forward. I think there's one little spike left in a couple of years, and after that, everything should settle out for a good long while.
Okay, I think I ask this question every year, and I just want to be reassured by Clive that by us spending this money, giving us a robust system, we are still insuring ourselves from any of these hackers that get in and they hold municipalities at ransom for silly amounts of money. So we are protected with this. We have the redundancy. Is that correct?
So we are fully backed up into the cloud right now, and we also have little bits of backups on site. But the main recovery right now is from the cloud. Part of that 164 is for the backup server, so that we can run more functionally if we have a complete outage in your location right now at Dusty's Den downstairs. If there's an issue there, I don't have another physical site that we can get up and running adequately because of the lack of a proper server. So that's part of that spend. It's just, yeah. As far as hacking software and ransomware, we're one of the few municipalities that are we have high insurance for that. And that's even though our insurance premiums are lower than competing municipalities in that area, we are covered for ransomware insurance, which means if we have a ransomware issue, we immediately call to our insurers. They link us to Toronto, they take over our network, and they work at removing the ransomware. And if we have to pay, it will be paid to get our data back. We've had, I think, 2 ransomware attacks, and both times we were able to recover and block it out without having any issues. But there's a full program behind us. So if we can't handle it, we have an expert IT company that will handle it and pay any ransomware covered through our insurance. I think the network, we've come a long way in our network, but like I believe what Jordan said is accurate, and we have to complete it. And it's unfortunate some of the delays that happen, but we're pushing hard to work with GCS Tech to get everything done.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other further questions from council on Schedule C? I have a just comment to the CAO. Maybe just a bit of a housekeeping thing here, but under 1 and 2, we have that council pre-approves the items identified in Schedule A, Schedule B. We don't have that under 3. So do we want to add that council pre-approves the items identified in Schedule C for immediate spending authority? It's missing between the 3 and the 4 on page.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Page 4 of 6. Okay, so we will make that amendment to that. So no further questions. So we'll move as amended then.
Move as amended.
Okay. Second.
Second.
And all in favor. That's carried. Thank you.
And I'll move 4, which is Schedule D.
Yes, Schedule D. Seconder for Schedule D.
I'll second.
All right, comments.
I know it's not listed green. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Councilor McKenna. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, just diving in. I know it's not listed green, but I have a question around $1 million on organic bins. It just really jumped out at me. Like, is it really $900,000?
Sorry, what was it on what bins?
Oh, organic garbage bins.
What page are you on, do you know?
We're on
Page 99.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So yeah, that is, it might be a little bit high. Looking again, it might be around $700,000 for the organic bins, but that is about what it will cost to outfit the entire town with tippable bins. So the reason we have this on here is that we're going forward with a grant application, and we're hoping to have most of this cost covered. And this is in anticipation of moving forward with a new contract, whether it's with Emterra or a different provider across the Comox Valley, and where we believe that we're going to be moving either to an automated or semi-automated garbage system. So to be an even bearer of worse news, you need to take that amount and multiply it probably by 3 on what it's going to cost the community to get recycle bins, garbage bins, and organic bins that are all able to work in a tippable or semi-tippable fashion, or automated or semi-automated fashion.
And just a follow-up question, would those bins be a one-time issue, or is that something the town is responsible to maintain in perpetuity?
So that's something that we're going to talk to council about if we go down this path, and I do believe we will be going down this path. You have a couple of options in front of you. You can require residents to get their own bins. You can require the company to provide the bins, or the town can provide them. That'll be a decision that council will be making in the future. Having said that, with this grant being applied, if we were to be successful and we're able to get, 30% of the overall cost of the bins funded, it would probably make sense for the town to own them. And then what you would do is issue the other bins to residents and have them pay them back over a number of years. And then when they need to be replaced, they would buy them from the town again.
Thank you.
All right, so going back to Schedule D as in Delta. Councillor Grant, did you have your? Okay. Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments on Schedule D?
Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor McCann.
Regarding the concrete pads for the food vendors, there's been a lot of discussion around parking in Marina Park, especially on the property that's not owned by the town, obviously. Would these concrete pads for the food vendors, would they be located exactly where the food vendors are located right now, or is there a proposed movement of the food vendors?
I'll let Parks speak to that. Andrew there is smiling, but I do believe it is right where they are. But Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, it would be right where the vendors normally are. I mean, you probably see the wear and tear, the grass patches, and our staff have to mow around them. It's uneven footing for people accessing. So it'd really be connecting that pathway that exists to those 4 locations where the vendors typically are situated.
And a follow-up question maybe to Andrew, would you be laying in new power and making those pads fully ready to go, or do you need to do that?
No, the power and water is already all there. It's just that the trailers themselves were just sitting on grass and dirt. So it'd just be basically just making that pad for the trailers to sit on with the power and the water access right adjacent to it. And we wouldn't have to move or change any of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great addition down there. I didn't see any other hands up. I did have a couple things that I wanted to just bring up for awareness, and not that we're doing any pre-approval today, but there was 2 things. The Ellis Playground, this is at the Kai Bay. If once we get into the nuts and bolts of the budget process, we'll be looking at $125,000. And I'm just throwing it out there to council and to staff. Is that a necessary spend down there? It's a very harsh area to have a play structure. I've been down there with my grandkids. The play area is the beach. And I'm just wondering, I'm just throwing it out there. Do we need to spend this kind of money down there where we could have some park benches, maybe one of those hibachi stands, for a little barbecue or something like that? So I guess that's just for discussion at some time. But also the other one is the Robb Road tennis courts. I see people playing there, not a ton. And I'm wondering if this is, and it's 3 years out, but I'm wondering if we should start getting our head around a pickleball court, because we have a full tennis court on, is it Stewart there, Pat, by you there? Yeah. And I'm wondering if this would be a nice pickleball court. So anyway, those are the 2 comments that I wanted to bring up. And if council wants to discuss them. But Councillor McKenna, you have your hand up.
Yeah, good opportunity, Mayor, to bring these kind of things up. That tennis court could also be, an affordable cooperative housing project. Right? I mean, there's opportunities in there, and I think now that we have a further chance to look at the white and the blue, which will be great, we can really take our time and look through it, and once we get through the greens.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Was there anything further on this?
No, but I would like to make a motion when we're done with this, that we get a report to prioritize our road paving so that we'll get a real picture of what we need, but I'll do that after we finish the.
Okay. So then seeing no further comments or questions on this, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you.
And then I would make a motion that we get a report from staff that would show prioritizing of road resurfacing. So my goal is to find out which ones we could actually push off and aren't as necessary as per what the CAO.
Okay, so we either need to have this unanimous or notice a motion. So, CAO.
This is really your decision, but my advice maybe on this would be, this is part of the agenda today with the staff report. So I'd say this motion may be considered within order of the agenda.
Okay. I know you're pretty strict on this, so I don't want to get in trouble from you. So yeah, oh, you did. Okay, so we had a mover and seconder. Then any questions on this? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. All right. So we'll move on to the Clean BC Organic Infrastructure and Collection Program grant application. That a grant application be submitted for the town's curbside organics program, and further that council supports the project and commits 1/3 share of the eligible costs of $198,459.
Move it.
Okay, so moved. Seconder from Councillor McGowan there.
Second.
Okay, and any questions on that? Councillor Minions.
Thanks. Yeah, of course I support organics and the things that it would do for the landfill. I'm just curious what the timeline on this looks like with the current Pigeon Lake or Cumberland being at like 90 to 95% capacity on the organics. So does this grant itself affect that capacity? As far as this sounds like this is for what the town of Comox would do to set up our bins and the processes, but I don't think that solves the capacity issue unless so is this setting ourselves up for 2022 versus trying to get a head start on that? I'm wondering if it affects the capacity issue. I'm assuming it doesn't because it's a capacity issue. But.
Yeah, so this doesn't address the capacity issue, and it's likely that if we were approved for this grant, we would need to take a look at the logistics of how this is going to go. So you'd probably roll it out to the people who have organics collection right away. But again, there's just so many balls in the air on this one, because it wouldn't make sense to roll them out until we move on to an automated or semi-automated system. And then there won't be an increase in capacity with the processing until that new facility comes online. So there's a whole bunch of different things at play. But one thing that's got a definite timeline is that grant application was last Friday, Shelley? This Monday? Yesterday. The grant application deadline was yesterday, and we wanted to get it in looking at the cost of transitioning over to this and hopefully finding a way to reduce the burden on our residents.
Just a quick follow-up to that. So because we don't know what that organic program necessarily is going to look like for the region and Strathcona region, is there money that would be going out kind of as like spent on this grant on like bins or processes? It looks like we'd be covering 1/3 before we know what actual, some of those things may or may not be provided within the future service. So it's obviously something we really should do. And it sounds like has the grant been submitted yesterday?
Correct.
Okay.
So the grant has been submitted. We can always, I shouldn't laugh at this because Shelley's put a lot of really hard time into designing this grant. And I think if we get it and don't move forward with it, it might anyway.
Well, I'm just, the motion is that we pass,
So-
that we submit the grant application. So I mean, it's.
Yeah, the
up to
motion is
you,
that we
fine.
submit the grant application, but what I was going to say is we can always turn it down. If we get further along and we are successful and we end up not needing it, we can always turn it down. So there's a decision point that needs to come in the future, but I am fairly confident that this is going to be required and this will come back to council before we spend the money on it. If we are approved for the grant, we will have a timeline for which we are able to satisfy the conditions of the grant. A report will be coming back to council, and you guys will be required to make those decisions. And that report is going to be coming regardless of the grant, because council is going to need to set the system for which you want the next garbage collection to be on, whether moving to automated or semi-automated. Do we want to keep with unlimited organics? I'll say it under my breath, whether or not we're doing weekly or bi-weekly garbage collection. All those sorts of things need to be looked at and decided by council. So this will be coming back regardless, but we will ensure to bring this back to you prior to moving forward with purchasing any bins.
Okay. And just because I think the big conversation would be making sure that we've communicated with the big CSW, like the service itself, because we may not know something that's part of the rollout. And so just to confirm, because obviously, so the grant application being submitted is already done. The second part of us committing to a third of up to 200,000, like we're not actually committing. It reads that we'd be committing to a third of those funds kind of without having that further contact with the
So,
service. And I
yeah.
just don't want that money to be spent for no reason.
That is a requirement of the grants that we commit to funding it. But if we were to not accept the grant, like if we get the grant and we don't move forward with it, they don't penalize us 1/3 of the amount or anything like that. But it's a requirement for those grants to ensure that you don't accept their money and then say, well, tough luck, we're not putting ours in. That's what that is there for. So if we accept the grant, move forward, take their money and buy the bins, we will have to put our third in. And that's what that guarantee is to the provincial government, that if we move forward and take their money, we're also going to put ours in. So I understand your concern, and don't be concerned about that if we move forward, we have to pay that 1/3 whether or not we move forward.
Okay, and that spend would come, I'm just making sure because we are okaying it with the current verbiage, but that spend would have to come through accepting the grant and putting the money forward would have to come back through council.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And obviously I'm for organics. I just am checking out the logistics.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, it's carried, thank you. And the implementation of contaminated sites regime, Comox Planning Procedure Amendment Bylaw 1966 be given first, second, and third reading.
Move.
Second.
And questions? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, so here's another part of the agenda I spent a lot of time on. So a site disclosure form, can maybe, this is to staff, can you explain the difference or why we would need this process if there's an environmental survey done on the properties, or do we require an environmental survey on the properties when they come for a development application?
So this is specific to the province's contaminated site legislation.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that one works, municipalities, now we're all mandated to do it. We had opted out previously, is essentially to do a screening process. So the property owner is then asked if they know of any contaminated uses that occurred on the site. And if they do know of some and no exemption in the provincial program exists, then it gets referred. They have to do out an application form. Then that gets referred to the province, and then the province decides whether or not an investigation is needed, and if so, the amount of detail and remediation that's needed. So it's totally different than an environmentally sensitive site. This is for just any site that has a potential contaminant on it.
Right. So if you've ever bought or sold a home, you know that there's a disclosure statement where they ask you do you know of anything that may have happened, and you say no. It sounds to me like an ESA would be a stronger measure for us to have as a requirement for development applications, like a phase 1 environmental assessment, than just a disclosure statement where somebody you know, what do you know about this property? Nothing. It's good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's good.
So right now, prior to this time, the province a number of years ago enacted the contaminated site legislation, and but it gave the local governments the option to opt out. So there was still from the province requirements in terms of disclosures when you buy and sell property. That's our environmental assessments. We do have that requirement, and we have that for environmentally sensitive areas, such as Gary Oak habitat, bald eagle nests, items like that, riparian habitat. So that it's a separate stream. This is more in terms of just contaminants on the soil and possible remediation. So you're looking at industrial sites typically, some commercial sites.
And just to your point, Councillor McKenna, it's a very similar system to what you're talking about on selling a home, where you're asked to declare what the uses are. I'd say that where you're going to run into a big difference on this is that through the voluntary disclosure of what the uses were, if you were to maybe be untruthful in the sale of a home, your recourse is going to be through civil court, and you're going to have to prove on a balance of probability and hire lawyers and all those sorts of things, where the difference when you're dealing with the provincial government is they're going to have a whole bunch of extra tools to come at you with than you would if you were just a regular citizen. So it is a level of voluntary disclosure when you're going through this. And they'll have that fine print at the bottom, which says, if you're untruthful, here are the fines you're going to pay.
Yeah, I read through the act and why they did all the changes. I spent a lot of time actually on this and trying to understand the difference between an ESA and a site disclosure form. And I just kept coming back to the fact that an ESA phase 1 is going to solve the same thing from the provincial government's request. In other municipalities, I guess they will require a site. I don't know if they'll require a site disclosure form, or will they require an ESA phase 1? Because I know municipalities could opt out up until now, and now you can't opt out. I guess my original question is, what's the difference between a site disclosure form and a phase 1 environmental survey?
Site disclosure.
Or would a phase 1 environmental survey, if somebody came to our planning department, 468 Anderton, 490 Anderton, here's our environmental survey phase 1, shows us really clear and clean. Do they need to do a site disclosure form?
They would have to still do a site disclosure form, because we don't know, we wouldn't have the expertise to know in terms of the ESA, the accuracy of it, is it sufficient, and if there is remediation required. So that's the whole provincial structure behind it.
But in sorry to belabor the point, but in an ESA, they're going to do test holes throughout the property, which will at least give some indication if there's remediation required.
Correct.
Yeah, so the site disclosure form will lead to the actions that need to be taken. So the site disclosure form may trigger something with the provincial government. So we are not allowed to approve subdivision or approve a change of use when these are happening, when it's sitting with the provincial government, and the provincial government will come back and tell the property owner what actions need to be taken.
The other thing is that an ESA is going to cost money, and if there's no known history, no known possibility of contaminants, like for example, in Comox, we don't really have a lot of industrial land or land that was ever used for industrial purposes. So it avoids what some people would see as an unnecessary cost and time delay.
So you can think of the site disclosure form as the reception desk, and then it goes back to the provincial government. They'll make a decision, and you may have to do an ESA 1, and that may satisfy them, or you may do an ESA 1, it comes back, and you may have to go up to an ESA 2, depending on what happens there.
But you're not submitting the site disclosure form to the provincial government.
If the site disclosure form, if it states, if it turns around and if there is a possibility of contaminants in the property, then that gets forwarded off to the province, and the province then makes the determination. Essentially what it does, to us is we freeze. We can't approve the application till we hear back from the province, either that it's exempt, the site's been remediated, or that some alternative mechanism acceptable to the province has been done.
The province is making the town of Comox their initial screening. So they're saying, we don't want and we can't handle taking in every application. We want the town to take in the applications, and anything that is above a trigger, which may require something, send to us and we'll deal with. So all the stuff that's lower level, like say a residential home being subdivided into 2 residential homes, they don't want to look at that. They're going to say, all right, the town, you guys are going to handle that. But if it's something that hits a higher use, then it's going to go to them. So the province is just using us as a screening tool.
Yeah, I see the province just offloading accountability to the municipalities is what I see, which is.
To be honest on this one, and you'll rarely hear me say that I'm not upset about the province downloading something onto us, but on this one, they actually resource most of it themselves. So we get it in, it's part of the normal checklist. It doesn't add much to the amount of work we have to do on any files, and we just send it away. So it's actually a pretty easy process for us. It may take a little bit of learning the first couple times it comes through, but it's not the most onerous thing, and they handle the heavy lifting on this one, which again, you won't hear me say that too often about how the province treats us. So
Okay, I'll leave it alone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? So all in favor of number 1 there? Okay, that's carried. And number 2, that the Comox Building Amendment Bylaw 1967 be given first, second, and third reading.
Move.
Seconder?
Second.
Okay, and questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. So going down to rezoning application RZ 20-1, that's at 468 and 490 Anderton Road. We've got 3 parts to that. And first one is that the Comox Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1944 be given first and second reading.
Moved.
Second.
Any questions on that? Councillor Bissinger.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. I know the original report stated it would be step 2. Just want to confirm that it is going to be built to step 3.
CAO, do we know that?
I'll have to pass that off to Marvin.
Marvin?
I'll just have to double check the report. So in the report, I believe we did include a line as to what the current code requirement is, because we're past the January date. And so let me.
And Marvin, I think your report said step 3, but their original report said step 2, but I think that's because it was done in 2017 or 2018, whatever it was.
Correct.
Just wanted to confirm the developer is aware of that requirement.
Yes.
Okay, and then can I ask a couple more questions too, or do you want to pass it to someone else?
Go ahead with your follow-up questions.
Okay, so I guess this one here, I'm happy to see ground-oriented infill. I think it's a great site for it. I know the original report, when they did community consultations, stated that roughly 30% of the trees would be retained. And then we saw the report, like the arborist report, and then the whole construction plan. And I think there's 6 trees that are slated to be kept, and 6 trees. And I think there's roughly probably 100 or something in that report, it says. So to me, that is, not acceptable. And I did walk the site, there's some beautiful trees, and there's some trees that are probably just, overgrown hedging. There's some that are taken over by ivy. And it just, it's just blatant that we need to have some sort of tree bylaw. And I know they have a beautiful landscaping plan, but I think in my mind, it's just like we are taking down so many trees here, and maybe I'm not meant to die on this hill to save those specific trees, because for construction purposes, it does make sense, or some of them are going to die in the next 5 years. So maybe it doesn't make sense, but I'd like to see for this specific development, like, can we come up with, for 1 tree cut, we're planting 1 tree, or we're planting 2 trees. I know that the base, we have that policy, every tree that goes down, we plant 2 trees. And if it's not in that exact same location, like Anderton is a pretty ugly arterial street. Like there's tons of, allowance between the road and the sidewalk. There's just empty patches of grass. Like, could we get the developer to plant, whatever it may be, the 30 trees of the 30% that they had originally promised? Can we get them to plant more trees somewhere else in the town, they can plant them, water them, maintain them, just as like a, you know, negotiation factor for this. I think it's sad that you go on that site that's fully treed, it's private, it's beautiful, it makes Anderton really look nice. And then all of a sudden we're saving 6 trees. Like that's pretty, I just have a hard time with that.
Okay, thanks. Marvin, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, to date, developers would be happy to clear sites and then give us trees to plant on municipal property. To date, what we've been doing through the rezoning is looking specifically at the site with the idea of requiring them to save the trees that are viable on site. So in terms of our parks and our other areas, the public areas, we're not short of trees or getting trees on those sites. I've never heard that we're short of the funds. I mean, the cost of planting a new tree is not very large. And so we have the ability to tree up our existing public lands. So it really becomes a matter of looking on the site itself. And when you start looking on these sites, and also in terms of as we increase the densities in the areas, and this one's ground oriented, so people are going to want their backyards and some space. Start running out of running out of places to put the trees on site.
And Marvin, if I can rebuttal to that, like I agree that maybe looking at the site itself is not the solution for this, but if you look at Anderton from Buena Vista heading north or whatever, like it's just grass. Or like, could we not make that more pretty and put some trees there, or hold this, have this developer put trees in that area? Or I don't know if that's the right place to do it or not, but there's been studies that if you have trees along boulevards, it reduces traffic speed because people feel more enclosed or whatever. So like I'm sure there's somewhere in the town, and make it a spot that makes sense. Don't put trees everywhere so this contractor has to water trees everywhere around town, but just pick a spot that we could have that for every tree that goes down, we have another tree planted. I think that's one of my big concerns. It's just it kind of loses that romance of that site is beautiful, like there's tons of trees sort of like around the border, and that's all going to go, and it's just going to be this like open development area, which is fine, but it's also like we're trying to get away from that, and we see so much of that. It'd be a shame to lose that many trees and not replace them.
I mean, in terms of other areas, we haven't looked at that, and I mean, we could do up a staff report on other boulevard areas or park areas if you wish. On Anderton itself, the problem is we're currently at 20 meters. It's an arterial road. We're going to 25 meters. And we'll go pin to pin in terms of using that land. And that's one of the reasons why a number of those trees in the front, beside the fact that they've already been topped, but the fact is that as we move that sidewalk and provide the pedestrians space on the sidewalk, we're going to kill the trees with the root system. And we looked at if we can provide additional trees, and we just simply don't. The infrastructure is taking up the room in the case of that road.
Okay.
Again, if you wish us to look at other options.
Okay, thanks. So I did see Councillor McKenna, Minions, and McGowan.
So this might be a bit tongue in cheek, but perhaps there's an opportunity, when trees come down, to have the profit of those trees, which is quite considerable, to go towards an amenity contribution to parks and playgrounds, something like that. I think trees are always such a huge discussion. And so my biggest concern around this subdivision, which is only mild, but it's a concern, is the amount of traffic on Anderton as an arterial road. And I went up and I studied it today, and I looked at the new development further up the street, and this development, and all those properties are big properties. It's going to get developed. So I don't know how we're going to handle the left turns or the right turns into these properties as they develop, because it is at some point will become a complete logjam of traffic on an arterial road. Today I drove by that Knoll intersection, which we all know is a terrible intersection. It's a hard one. We've done great work there. It's awesome. The flashing light, the walk signs, the slowing down. But man, is it going to get even tougher at that intersection now with somebody, 50 meters later turning left into their home. I just don't know what kind of long-term plan we have there on Anderton as these properties get developed. That's my main concern. I have no problem with the submission. I think it's a very solid submission by the developer, but I do have long-term concerns over traffic. And normally I would not have those, but I do on that arterial road. I think it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and I do agree. This is the growing pains that we've been experiencing off and on, and really on this time. And going back years ago when we did the OCP and the infill that we had in those larger lots, and getting houses in there, and that impacts that. So in some ways we're a victim of our own success, but yeah, we have to figure out that way forward. Councillor Minions and then McGowan.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to what Councillor Bissinger was saying on the trees. I think, reading the letters from what happened over on Silversmith as well, as far as the trees that are kind of proposed to be maintained and then what actually happens kind of by the end, I think it's good to have a very ironclad policy on that, which I know there are policies for that, but I'm not sure if the penalties need to be stricter. Or I was down in Parksville where Ballard Homes does quite a few developments, and there was just like acres and acres of clear cut for development, which is okay, but for me personally, that's not something I would want to see in Comox, where they just come in and every single tree is taken away. So I think it has to be part of the balance consideration. But my question, so I agree, if that's something that planning could look at, as Alex mentioned, I would support kind of getting a little more, maybe a deep dive down the road later in the year on our tree bylaw and our tree canopy, because I've heard our tree canopy is also quite good here in Comox. But on the affordable housing amenity contribution, I've noticed kind of their calculations based on, they started public consult in 2018. And so that was when it was 10% versus now, of course, we're at the 15%. And it was also valued at the lot of 700,000. And I'm going on memory here, but the number that it came out to, I think it was just below 20,000. We've had presentations from planning before on exactly what that calculation looks like, and that we would want people to be going in at the point of the development permit. So I'm wondering how accurate that 10% based on the 700,000 coming out to 19,000 for 15 units just in the market that we're in. It didn't quite seem sufficient, even though there was logic to it. So I'm curious what that calculation will look like, and if what's in the report that they've submitted, it would be accurate.
We can get that to council. I would assume that that's based on the land value, the purchase price at the time 2 years ago when they purchased the property and started their application. But we can get that information to you, and I can send it to each of you in your emails.
Okay, thank you. And maybe it's from memory, but my memory was that when the development permit came in, that would be what the percentage would be. That, if the development permit was not in before, then the percentage that we would be calculating it at 15%, or would it be the 10%, Marvin?
No, on the date of that application, it would be the 10%.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We have McGowan, Grant, and then McKenna. Okay, McGowan and then McKenna.
My questions also revolved around the trees and the traffic. Just being able to retain as many trees as possible. I feel like we've lost a few trees with the number of developments that we've approved in the last few years, and making sure that we are retaining as many as possible is very important to me. And yeah, just the issue with the Knoll and Robb intersections being as busy as they are, what the plan is for those intersections and the upcoming traffic there. But yeah, those are my main issues. Any of the development issues, like a higher fence or visitor parking and stuff, that would all come up at the public forum and then spoken about later. Am I correct there?
Yeah, there'll be. Oh, Marvin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so we do have screening regulations in our bylaws. So I believe it's 1.8 meters in terms of the screening requirements, if memory serves me correct. So that would be either fencing or landscaping.
Okay.
And yes, that's 1.8 meters in height.
Okay.
That's on all three sides of the property.
And they can't go over that?
On fencing, fences top out, I mean, landscaping can go over it. That's the minimum. On
Okay.
fencing maximum fence height is 2.3 meters.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McKenna, you had another question?
Yeah, so, Marvin, I guess you could build a berm and then build your fence on top of that, right? As long as the fence doesn't exceed a certain 2.3 meters. But my question's more around water retention. There's it's pretty wet in that area, and we're going to remove a lot of trees. Are you or is engineering comfortable that you're going to be able to move water off that site into, I was reading a lot of the submissions by the engineer, and obviously you wouldn't put it through to proposal unless you were comfortable, but do you feel like there's a good solid mitigation there of the water that's going to be coming off that site? Because there's a lot of, that seemed to be one of the more popular contributions through the public hearing process.
See if Shelley wants to answer that. On the fence height, no, you can't berm it. We do take fence height based on established grade. So if you just build it up and stick your fence on top of it, we go down to the previous grade on the 2.3. So Shelley, did you want to weigh in on the storm?
Sorry, I was muted. For the storm, this site is basically retaining the 1 in 100 year flow event on site with storm tech chambers. So that will be all retained.
Okay, thanks. And any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of number 1? Okay, that's carried. Number 2, that the Comox Phase Development Agreement Authorization Bylaw 1953 be given first and second reading.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, questions on that? Seeing none, was that a question or your hand up?
Yeah, question.
Okay.
Just back to the earlier conversation around turning left into this project. Has there been any consideration as to left turning lanes on Anderton?
That would be, again, Shelley?
I think in the report, it looks, so just maybe in context, arterial roads, you can carry between 5,000 to 30,000 vehicles a day. Anderton Road itself just sees over 8,000. So the level of service, we still have a ways to go. As part of the update of our traffic study that we do, we basically look at the short-term horizon and the long-term horizon, basically our OCP and full build out and what improvements that we need to do. Anderton and Knoll Avenue are operating at an acceptable level of service. I believe it's a B. And Rob and Anderton is a poor level of service, and the long-term recommendation for that intersection is a roundabout. The left-hand turn bay on Anderton Road itself, the trips that are going to be generated from this development going out on a daily basis is 6, and coming in, I believe, is 8. So pretty minimal for the amount of additional volume that we'll have in the left-hand turn bay. I don't anticipate it being an issue at this point for this development.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. Do you envision this roundabout to easily function with this 11 to 15 unit development?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If it's designed properly, that's the key with the roundabouts. They really have to be designed properly so you can make sure that flow continues through at a speed that's acceptable. That's the basically looking at a roundabout as the preferred option at an intersection as opposed to the traffic lights. So that was what was proposed. We have a number of them that's actually proposed in our traffic study throughout a lot of the intersections. So I believe that'll definitely be a good facility to put in place at that intersection when the time comes.
And is that something that we can involve developers to help us with?
We can. Basically, what's required right now to move that roundabout forward is that we need land dedication. We need a wider road dedication to put in the footprint. So as development does happen, we can make sure that we secure the land that we need to do. If development happens and the level of service or that development is pushing that project to be advanced, then that'd be something that we can negotiate. Marvin might speak on that a little bit more, that would be an improvement that need to be done for that development to occur based on the impact that additional traffic would have on our existing road system.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure Councillor Bissinger would know. She's shaking her head no, giving us a section of her lot there. Okay, any further questions on that? So this is for number 2. So all in favor? That's carried. Number 3, that a virtual public hearing in respect of this bylaw be scheduled for March the 3rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom video conferencing.
Move.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? All right, that's carried. Thanks. Okay, we have a notice to motion that the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, referred to as UNDRIP. Do we have Councillor McGowan put that out? So do we have a seconder on this?
I'll second it.
All right, and questions, comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thanks to Councillor McGowan for bringing that forward. Under correspondence, we have from the chair of the CVRD request for approval of the Regional Transportation Planning Memorandum of Understanding. So what would council like to do? Move receipt?
Receipt?
Yeah, move receipt.
I was reading my next section here.
Okay, and I guess I got a question maybe to the CAO. Going through this, what's the difference with this between what we've been doing with the regional district? Is there any?
This is a more formalized process. So we work with our neighboring communities as well as the CVRD when we have these type of developments that are taking place in between our communities. So I guess it would be a more formalized process for bringing everybody together. It'll likely take up more staff time than what we are doing right now because we'll be involved in conversations that maybe don't include our interests to the point that we would normally be involved. It may also provide a benefit that we're around the table and talking more. So, sometimes that natural conversation leads to discussions that wouldn't have been had in the past. So it'll be more staff time for sure. Whether or not it's a benefit overall would be remain to be seen.
Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Grant, you had your light on, or do you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
No. Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Bissinger?
Yeah, maybe just an update too, just following Jordan's comment about the. Ah, shit. Never mind. I was gonna. Sorry for. Use bad words. Maya's asleep, so just want an update about the IRTSC, so the Integrated Regional Transportation Select Committee. So I know we had a meeting. Oh man, it must have been before Christmas, and I think as it was a select committee that was, I guess, struck by the CVRD, and at that committee, it was sort of decided that we've, achieved what we wanted to, or I guess we looked at the option. I guess the main driving factor behind that select committee was to look at a multi-use path along Dyke Road connecting Comox and Courtenay. So we sort of went through all the motions for that, and it's kind of just been parked for now. So I think there was kind of a decision to abolish that committee going forward and to just recreate it, I guess, if there is any need for having it. So I think that's sort of what that MOU states too, is that it's sort of like a it can just like fluctuate as there's needs that are required. So right now the IRTSC is sort of like on a hold until a future collaborative requirement comes up from the CBRD, and the CBRD tasks the committee to look at something specific regarding integrated regional transportation.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the multi-use pathway on the dike, because I think if there's anything that the communities of Courtenay and Comox would like to see is that. And that's been held up a long time. You know, a lot of us remember the young lady being hit on that road and being found in the ditch hours later. And, you know, we really need to have this in front of us and to try moving it forward. So, okay, thank you. And any other questions or comments on this? Moving for receipt. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And we will go to reports from member of council. So I'm going to go top left just because Pat's just put something in his mouth, and I'm going to ask him if he would like to go ahead with reports from council.
Yeah, had a busy week. Attended the Community Justice Center board meeting. Just want to let everybody know Terry Lynn Williams Davidson is going to be the next presenter for the Iona Campanula Lecture Series. And she's a musician, author, activist, artist, lawyer, dedicated to really the continuation of the Haida language and culture. So she's going to be really cool. Right now it's planned to be in person, but it might be virtual. Looking at October of 2021. Attended the Comox Valley Community Foundation Enrichment Awards. Just an amazing presentation from so many great community partners, and the money that was handed out. Just the Community Foundation does such a wonderful job in our community. Spent my Saturday morning with the Vancouver Island Regional Library. That was my very first meeting. I was the AGM. It was very interesting learning, actually. And so more to come on that as I learn more. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Actually, our libraries are doing heroic work right now in our communities to stay open and serving our populations. Attended the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce virtual gala. That was very cool. Nice to see all the businesses in our community. Comox was very, very well represented, and had a really super time virtually on that. And then today attended the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. I heard the presentation that we heard earlier tonight. And just so everybody knows, Dawn to Dawn was able to purchase that home in Comox thanks to our funds. So that's where I've been. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGowan.
So I attended the Comox Youth Climate Council AGM, which was amazing. The youth are organizing in a way. They ran their meeting better than a lot of meetings that I go to. It was incredible, and they have a lot of knowledge and just gumption behind them. They're going to do great things, and I'm hoping to see a lot of things out of that. I have attended a Food Policy Council subcommittee meeting, FCM climate course, the second part of section 1, or the part 1 of section 2. There we go. Was about engaging in online presentations and distance communication, seeing as everything is online now. So that was helpful. Looking forward to the next 2 parts of that. And yeah, for the most part, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swift, and then I'll go Bissinger.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I was at the recreation meeting where we had a delegation concerned about the lack of access at the aquatic center. And I spoke about this before, but they fine-tuned the Resilience Infrastructure Grant and have submitted a grant for $2.1 million. And they're upgrades for roof replacement, accessibility, retrofits, energy efficiencies, and so on. If they're successful in this grant, it will be 100% funded, and it must be completed. The work must be completed by the end of this year. So hopefully they'll get it and get ahead. I attended the CBRD board meeting. It was a long one. We had a presentation from the BC Assessment Authority. which was kind of interesting. They were saying that the residential single-family home in Comox is up 6%. Probably Nicole can speak more to that one. But we had budget presentations for the first services. Comox takes part in 22 of the services, but we have to go through all the budgets for all of them. There was a presentation, a 5-year review of the homeless support service, which was 451. And the review findings found that there were 78 units created that otherwise wouldn't have been created without that service. Or they were created faster than they would have otherwise been created. And that the stewardship of the coalition is working well. I spoke about the wood smoke reduction program, but if you have issues in your neighborhood, it would be really great if people could promote the rebate program. The Sewage Commission, we had there was an agreement, a community benefits agreement with the KFN. It has been signed by both the CBRD and the KFN, but I'm still waiting for a joint statement to come out. So I won't say anything more about that at this point. And there is a regional food hub cost sharing agreement with the province where they want to get a project developed and a business plan. I attended the Philburg board meeting. Oh, I attended the 911 meeting as a representative from the CBRD. We're looking at different apportionment models, and there'll be more on that to come. I attended the Philburg board meeting. They're still hoping for some kind of festival this summer, although it won't look or feel like what's gone on in the past. So they're still debating about that. And with keeping that in mind, they've delayed submitting any budget to the town. They usually do that at the end of January, but they asked to have till the middle of March till they figure that out. The gift shop was closed for the month of January, but it's reopened. So if you need any gifts or you know of anybody that's looking for something interesting, please direct them there. The Philburg also won the Heritage Award at the Chamber of Commerce Awards on Saturday. So they were very pleased about that. And lastly, for Heritage Week, the Philburg is partnering with KFN and the 3 museums, and they developed a scavenger hunt that is being done virtually. So you go online, you get the first hint, and then there's a scavenger hunt through the valley with QR codes and so on to celebrate the heritage of the entire valley. So it's a nice collaboration with the museums. And this scavenger hunt is going to take place from the 5th of February to the 21st. So if you're looking for something to do, you might look into it. And that's my report.
Well done. Thank you. Councillor Bissinger, top that.
It'll be a lot faster. Discussed with some residents of Buena Vista about the whole traffic calming potential study that we could do there. Also attended the solid waste management meeting. So we adopted a budget and looked over the proposed financial plan coming up for the next 4 years, and just looked at a couple capital projects that are going to happen here at the landfill. So just more delineation of like the different bins. I think they're going to add some bins for the waste and then just have them separate. And part of it is, COVID requirements, so having more spacing, but just also having like ease of access of those bins and just creating more overall for the public. So that was basically my summary, and I'm back at work now. So yay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Minions, and then Grant.
Yeah, very similar to Alex's, so I'll make it quick, but the waste management meeting was based on budgeting. Hospital board, Charlie Cornfield from Campbell River is the chair, wait for a second year or more, I'm not sure. And Doug Hillian is the vice chair. And we spent most of that, it was a good 4 or 5 hour meeting, talking about what type of strategy we wanted to look at in the hospital board for the next year or two, kind of short term. And that was interesting because it had about 30 of us on Zoom trying to do strategizing, but it came out that pretty much everybody was on the same page, that we didn't really want to see too much downloading from the province on things that are really needed. Like we talked a lot about mental health, addiction, home care supports, and long-term care. They asked us to look at 8 to 10 topics and which ones we'd want to get into. And I think pretty much all directors said, we picked the top 3, but said we can't really be getting into that municipally or regionally. It's just too challenging. So that kind of came out of strategy, and Zoom actually worked quite well. So I think that was good. I attended a webinar on creative solutions and new ways, and artist series on, it was basically mostly on recycling and waste management. And it featured Nanaimo Regional District, who always has really good diversion rates and things like that. And I mean, every conversation always comes back to composting being the #1 thing. So that's always good to hear that we're moving in that direction. And then just lastly, we set up our Coldest Night of the Year team, which I think is really important based on how it supports the 2 local organizations that we give through to the coalition. But I believe it's the 5th or 6th year, and I've done it every year, but it's nice to have the town of Comox. I saw Village of Cumberland was up there, and Courtney is now on there. And we've raised just over $2,000. Chief Schreiner joined us, and he's a good half of that amount. So thank you, Chief Schreiner. But we did invite the senior staff and I'm just kind of trying to grow the team and get it to be a collaboration of Comox people. And that event in Canada raises $5 million. And this year, our local organization is hoping to raise $121,000, which they're about halfway to. And Team Comox is ranked 7 of 49 teams right now in the Comox Valley. And the Comox Valley group is ranked, out of across Canada, they're ranked 10th out of 150. So Comox Valley is doing decent, and our team is doing decent. So if I bother you a little bit over the next 2 weeks, just to try to get a couple people to join us in solidarity. And we may do an outside walk together apart, but I think Ken might have been joking. So it's just talking about the real estate part really quickly. We're actually in a very severe housing crisis based on homes are not coming up for sale here. And it might be the pandemic and it might be Comox, but any small way we can support the coalition and this event in a small way, we're going to start seeing some stories of people being displaced because of how the housing market is very dire for people right now, especially renters. And that's it.
And supporting our local realtors by selling our house.
Wow. No comment. I was going to say something. It will get me backlash. No comment.
Councillor Grant, go ahead.
Thank you. So fortunately, going last, everybody does your report for you, so that was good. So I attended the CVRD budget meeting, the sports commission meeting, and the hospital board meeting. And I also attended the service review meeting for economic development. And then I had a follow-up meeting on that with some of the directors of CVEDs. I attended the sewer meeting with KFN, and just so you know, the joint statement coming out on the community benefits agreements is in KFN's hands. It should be out fairly soon. And what else did I do? Oh, and I got a tour of the new water plant. It's very impressive, actually. I'll try and see if we can line something up where we can get some more of the elected officials out there, although it's hard with COVID. But we're about 4 months away from that being online, and we're probably 6 to 8 weeks from them starting to run water through it. So we're getting that's the good news. The bad news is that means the bill comes pretty soon too. So that's what I've been doing, and I've got some other reports for our in-camera, so I'll save it for that.
Okay, thanks. And quickly for me, the CAO and I drove over to Cumberland, had lunch with Mayor Baird and their CAO, and had some good discussions. I did attend part of the in-camera regional district report as pertains to ECDEV. Had a couple island health calls, and one of the mayors asked a question to the province: when do you think the restrictions will be eased up? And it was Dr. Stanwyck who reported that not until about 70 to 80% of the population is vaccinated, and he estimated that would be this fall. So, it looks like we got a bit of time to be status quo. I had some discussions with BIA representatives on a few issues. But I did want to, you mentioned about the money will be coming from, or the bill will be coming from the regional district, and maybe to the CAO. If it seems that when we put our taxes out, we are the bearer of the bad news, and even though our tax wants are really a small part of that. We've heard tonight where regional district wants 100 for this, 200 for that. And these, as Councillor Swift said, we're part of 22 services. It just seems like there's no disrespect to the regional district, but they have a lot of money to spend. And we are the ones that generally have to support that from our knocking on doors. And it's not always our tax bill that's getting them. It's a whole gamut of things. So it's something to be mindful of as we go forward and telling our residents what the taxes are. So, but that's all I have. And I guess at this point we need a motion for a resolution to exclude the public and go in camera.
Moved.
Second.
And all in favor. And that's carried. Thanks.
Break.
So stand by, folks.
Are we gonna have to log back in or?
No, we can, oh, hold on, I've got to sign out of live.
Do you guys care if I eat on camera? It's not the last salmon of the Brooklyn Creek, but